Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I am going to try this one more time. Just one more time. I've switched to another extender and it doesn't seem like that extender is doing what it's supposed to do. So 1 second, let me try one thing. Alright. I am seeing green. Green tells me I'm on. It looks okay. Let's hope it stays up. Alright. It runs the gambit. Open minds. Blaze one if you got one. That's pretty much the philosophical thing of that particular show or that particular episodes. This is going to be a 420. Yeah, this is going to be a 420. So, one of the most stress-inducing episodes of Voyager. And I know those things kind of sounds weird that you're putting in the same sentence because it is Voyager. No slight to the people who love Voyager. But one of the most, I guess, crisis-inducing episodes of Voyager was episode Nemesis. I'm going to show you the trailer for Nemesis to explain why. But it hits at this idea of identity. And it does so in this awesome, awesome way. But it gives you a certain amount of distance, so the crisis of it, like the threat of it, is somewhat soothed just by the third person perspective that you're taking from the show. I'm going to show this trailer. I'm going to put this in more epic terms. The trailer is as cheesy can be. It's cheesy on a level that is, it is immensely cheesy. So I'm going to put it in more epic terms, but the trailer at least gives us something to base what I'm about to say on. I had a hard time figuring out what to even call this particular one, but I think I'm going to call it the difficulty or the problem of identity within regards to politics. And not identity from the standpoint of black, white, gay, Hispanic. I'm talking about identity, who, individual, who am I, and these type of questions. So let's take a look at this. This is Voyager, episode Nemesis, and I would explain what you're about to watch.
Behind enemy lines.
Don't move.
In the heat of battle.
I'm not planning to shoot anybody.
The atrocities of war.
Don't make me kill you.
Will change one man.
Keep your hands off her.
And push him to the breaking point.
I wish it were as easy to stop hating as it was to start.
On the next Star Trek Voyager.
Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So guys, I have tried to do this video like 3 times and I am going to shoot myself in the face. And so I ran a test run on this. I've changed the server and everything else. It looks like it's doing okay. The test run went okay. So I'm going to try to do this again. This is a 420. So 420, for those of you who've just come into the show or who are my new subscribers. Hello, new subscribers. During the 420 time, 420 is for whatever reason is considered a stoner's holiday. And in considering a stoner's holiday and giving that holiday a certain amount of credit, I did a show, a 420 show. And it was this kind of blaze one if you got one, and let's talk about weird, interesting, and strange things. Ultimately, it was someone just playing around with thought experiments. It could range anything from aliens, consciousness, UFOs, whatever. Runs the gambit. And yeah, this is, in some of these cases, suspension of doubt is required, but in all cases, an open mind. So one of the episodes one of the things I want to talk about today is dealing with this issue of identity. So this is a blaze one if you got one, because I want to create this hellscape of a crisis or psychological crisis. I'm going to explain this, however, through the context of the episode of Voyager. It is the most crisis and panic-inducing episode of Voyager that I think exists in the Voyager ethos, I guess. those things, it's funny, those things don't necessarily go together because we are talking about Voyager. And that is a slight some of the people who may love Voyager. Voyager's not bad. It's not bad. It's not the best, but it's not bad. But this particular episode got across this particular point extraordinarily well, with the soothing distance of a third-person perspective to keep people from freaking out as they watched the episode. I mean, mind you, that's if they paid attention to what was taking place in the episode. I'm going to show the trailer to this episode. This is a immensely cheesy trailer. Now, I'm going to paint a more epic scenario after this trailer plays. But this trailer is somewhat cheesy, and so it somewhat belies what I'm talking about right now. But we can talk about it after. I'm going to paint a more epic story of this. But at the very least, it gives us something to work with and something for you to see, to understand the context of what I'm about to say. So, let's take a viewing.
Behind enemy lines,
Don't move.
in the heat of battle,
I'm not planning to shoot anybody.
the atrocities of war
Don't make me kill you.
will change one man
Keep your hands off her.
and push him to the breaking point.
I wish it were as easy to stop hating as it was to start.
On the next Star Trek Voyager.
Like I said, bit cheesy.
Stardate
Oh, okay.
5109.6.5.
Yeah, we don't need to hear that part.
Although Lieutenant Tuvok has managed to bring
Yeah, so slightly cheesy. But what's taking place, basically, what it boils down to is Chakotay, the guy with the face paint. Chakotay, if I'm not mistaken, crash lands on a planet. While he's on that planet, he ends up interacting with a group of beings, group of aliens. These beings, he finds himself in the middle of a conflict. Now, being a Starfleet officer, he doesn't necessarily want to, actually he's Marquis, but he's on a Starfleet ship. He doesn't necessarily want to get involved in that conflict. And for the most part, he does what any other human being would do, or any other rational human being would do. I'm taking no sides in this, I'm staying out of it. The problem is things precipitate. He's getting closer to certain people, certain factions, and he finds that there's a trauma that takes place when somebody that he got close to end up getting killed. Now, this sends him over the line. He picks up a weapon and he goes to war. Chakotay is now on an alien planet in a war with another alien species, fighting on the side of this being or this race that he just met. Chakotay is eventually met by Tuvok. Tuvok is the Vulcan on the ship. He's a black Vulcan. And he explains to him, look, you've fallen for a ruse. This isn't real. These beings, they trick people into fighting for them in this way. Meaning they trick people in order to fill up their ranks. It's like this scenario that you've interacted with, that's not a real scenario. That scenario either was holographic or something else, but ultimately it was an act. You've been tricked. You've been hoodwinked. Now, he eventually gets Chakotay back up to the ship. And Chakotay, while he's on the ship, that last line that you heard, he says, I wish it was easy to stop hating as it was to start. He ends up meeting the aliens, that particular race that he was fighting. And in talking to this particular alien, this particular delegation, Chakotay is seething, pissed off. He's angry. He's like foaming at the mouth angry. He's barely keeping it to himself. And he realizes that everything that I've learned was a lie, and yet I still hate this particular being. I hate this creature. I understand that my memories are false. I understand that everything was a ruse. I was tricked. I was hoodwinked. All of that stuff is true. I understand it completely. I believe it as a flat fact. And I still hate this thing that's sitting in front of me. I find it to be fascinating and amazing. Now, take it from Chakotay's standpoint and take that from the context of a wider society and a wider world. What aspect of you is you, and what aspect of you is the society and the context to which you're raised? Like, and is there a difference in those things? So, say for instance, this is what I'm getting at. How can you separate yourself from the society, culture, all of this other stuff? How can you say that you as an individual have this certain amount of free will when everything that you are, even your range, your spectrum of thought and everything else, is for the most part given to you by the society to which you were raised. I'm trying to get across this thing that if you were raised in feudal Japan, if you were raised on Vulcan, if you were raised on Kronos, the Cleon homeworld, wherever you were raised, you would take on the cultures, the societies, the framework, the workable point of view, all of these things of the society to which you're raised. What aspect of that is you, and what aspect of that is the society itself? Like, how do you disassociate who you are from where you are? And can you make that disassociation at all? And if you can't make that disassociation, meaning if you can't say, well, this part is me and I am separate and distinct from all this other stuff, and the stuff that was dumped into me either implicit or explicitly in no way affected me, well, of course, there's no way you can say that. Of course, everything that you are is rubbing up against everything that, is outside of yourself. They're inextricably linked. You can't get away from it. There is no aspect of you that's purely and entirely you. Your idea of free will, for the most part, is somewhat of a myth. Somewhat of a myth. You've been dumped into all of these things, these workable point of views of the world, and you, for the most part, take those things as being real and legitimate and almost solid items. Those things are not necessarily solid. Those things are agreements and beliefs that you've taken on from the wider world. It's just your point of view. I'm trying to get across this thing of, if everything has been dumped into you in this way, what if many of those items are not true? In the same way that Chakotay was on that particular planet, on that world, believing he was fighting a war, believing all of this stuff, what if the things that was dumped into you weren't necessarily true? And what if you were pushed to believe certain things, certain ideas of the world and certain points of view? And in believing those certain ideas of the world and certain points of view, you as a human being, you look at this and say, well, I am making certain choices. I am making certain decisions. I am a person who has free will and choice and everything else. Even though, for the most part, you're just moving along in the course with your particular society, within a range of conversation and debate and everything else. How's that free will? I would agree, put it this way, I would agree with you that there is an aspect of you, it's almost like a kernel of you that grows and everything expands, and it takes in information and it processes information in a particular way. Fair enough. I would say yes, that's the part of you that's you. But if you can't necessarily pull yourself from the context of your society, meaning however you behave, however your society behaves, whatever your society looks like, ultimately that's that society being reflected to the wider world. How do you... I'm trying to get across something. It's this thing of the psychic self. I'm trying to get across this thing that the things that you think are you, and the things that you think are unique and special and all the stuff about yourself, is purely a result of the society to which you're in. All of those people, and look, there are problems with this from a political standpoint. Somebody gets shot, somebody shoots somebody ends up in some kind of crime, somebody ends up, whatever, living on the street, homelessness, all of stuff, corruption. All of those things, for the most part, are reflections of the society itself. Those things are not individualistic things. It's not this particular individual did this particular crime, and this particular individual was separate and distinct without nothing being dumped into him at all. Those things were dumped into him by the society itself. That's what I'm getting at. The way we do our criminal justice system, we pretend as if it's purely the individual that's doing those things, and acts as if the society itself is completely separate and distinct from that particular individual, and that particular individual didn't grow up in that society, that he didn't grow up with a particular family, that he didn't grow up with a particular culture, that he didn't grow up with certain norms and certain things that particular society prized and held true, and status and all this other stuff. I don't want to go so far as to say we're robots, but I will say this idea of free will has been greatly overblown. And from a societal standpoint, we need to start looking at this stuff from the standpoint of what are the things that are in place that are driving certain behaviors in our society. And are there ways to change those things so the behaviors won't necessarily be driven in those directions? I think it's a fair question. I think it's a fair question. I think this idea of free will is massively overblown. Let's see. I'm surprised if anybody's still here. Let's see. Oh, people are here. All right. Let's see. It's like after all the screw-ups and foibles and everything else. Seems to be working good. I love the title of this. I saw the Jank stream and someone said you were dissing Voyager. Your response was the angriest I ever saw you get. I never diss Voyager. Right. Right. It's not only pulling oneself from the context of society, but also biology. Yeah. There's a huge part of ourselves that is not us in a sense you're discussing. Yeah. Large parts of ourselves that are not us in a sense you're discussing that are not us. I need more explanation on that one, dude. That are not us. I need more context. Let's see. Damn it. Try to pop that back in. Yeah, I've been, it's funny, I've been thinking about this particular one for a while. And yeah, I'm not dissing Voyager. I like Voyager. I'm not taking shots at Voyager. At least, yeah, I'm not taking shots at Voyager. I've joked the Doctor a few times, but I'm not taking shots at Voyager. Alright, I'm not going to keep this one up because I have 2 more that I want to do, and now that I have a stream that's working, people have utilized that question to manipulate rather than improve society. They have 100 years of studies in this and can bypass our conscious thought. To manipulate rather than improve society. Not us. The subconscious mind. Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Yeah. We... put it this way. I look at society from the standpoint of if we want to get anything done. If we want to say, look, we want to get rid of crime, we want to get rid of corruption, we want to get rid of all of these things. It's passing a law is not going to do it. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is you're talking about a change in the society, the drivers of that particular behavior. We don't do that. We take the lazy route. All right, this guy did something wrong. This guy is a separate and distinct thing from anything else. This guy is in a void, and we're just going to put this one particular guy in prison for this particular crime. And it's like, wait a minute. Why did he do the crime? You're not curious about why he did the crime. They never interrogate why he did the crime. What were the drivers of that particular behavior? They always let that go. They always let it go. Our very sense of ourself may not be real. I love that. Again, with the Voyager defense, I'm actually on season 2 for the first time now, and I think it's great. Voyager's not bad. It took me a little bit to get into it. So I started to like Janeway the further on it got. And when Janeway was the older Captain Janeway, I loved her. I thought she was awesome. Terrifying and epic. But when it first started, it's like every other show. You know, the first season tends to be somewhat rocky. They're trying to get their sea legs. But after a while, they start to click. When they start to click and the characters themselves interact with one another real well, it works. I just didn't have this strong fondness for anybody on the cast, with the exception of maybe Janeway, and I love powerful women. The powerful women think is sexy. Janeway and who else? Doctor. Doctor was okay. Yeah, I guess the Doctor was okay. I couldn't really get into the other people. I didn't like Tom Paris. I thought he was a bit of a prick. Couldn't stand Harry Kim. I don't know why I could not stand him. But nah, it's not bad. We have to overcome the desire to create hierarchies. Yes, agree, Gardner. We can rid of them, but must practice harm reduction regarding the aspect of ourselves. Communism was a poor attempt at this. See, I don't think it was communism. I think it was state capitalism. I actually fall into that argument of it wasn't workers owning the means of production. It was a totalitarian state. That was not the envision or the idea of communism. I mean, they're talking about like destruction of the state and all this other stuff. And so, I mean, give rid of the desire for hierarchies and arguments. Yeah, I agree with you though. I agree with you. It's like, but how do you get rid of the desire for hierarchies? I think you have to design that stuff out. Like, from where we are, all of this stuff from around us seems normal, but this is terrifying reality. Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm amazed that this is normal. This is what's considered rational. You have open bribery in DC, like literally open bribery. You have plutocrats coming out on screens, you know, screaming into the camera, saying, "How dare you bring up this issue of class, even though you have the worst income inequality in the history of income inequality." It's like, come on. He's like, "Oh, how dare you bring up class? How dare you bring this up? I'm giving you money. I will shut my wallet if you bring this up again." There's a reason why Democrats don't bring up class. It's not because they're inept. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're stupid. And, you know, it's like when you kind of make that thing of, well, if they don't do X, why aren't they doing X? There has to be reasons why aren't they doing X. And I strongly suspect that plutocrat screaming out there that if you bring up class again, he would close his wallet is part and parcel to that particular reason. If you need to get elected and you need to get a lot of cash in order to get elected, it's like, how do you get that cash? How do you accumulate that cash? And at the point where you start taking that cash from big ticket donors and people who have lots of cash to give, what direction do you lean? You know you need that cash to get elected. You know you need that cash to get elected. What direction do you lean? Are you going to bite the hand that feeds you in this? Of course you're not. I mean, think all those people who work at a job. Are you going to bite that? How do you behave when you're at work? Do you behave in the same way at work than you behave at home? The answer, of course, was no. You're paid to act a particular way. Your behavior conforms to the paycheck that you're getting. Those politicians, they're on the job. They're being paid to act a particular way. There's certain red lines. There's certain things that they don't necessarily want to say. The Democratic Party has moved so far to the right and has been captured by private interests. And, I mean, they like to toe this line. I was listening to this thing from Keith Ellison today and Nomi Kantz. They can toe this line all they want. You look at the past 20, 30, 40 years. You look at what the Democratic Party was going in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and you look at what they are today. Compare the record of Obama with what Ellison is saying, trying to make this argument that this is not a neoliberal party. That is an amazing statement. We could constantly push back on it one iota. Look, I'm ranting at this point. It's just, yeah, I'm ranting at this point. I'm not going to rant. I'm not going to rant. I'm refusing. I'm pulling myself back from the rant. Yeah. It's just aggravating. The politics is aggravating. It's just it's a terrifying planet, and people look at it as normal. It just gets normalized. I wonder if Garden Gnome has commented in this chat yet. Yeah, Garden Gnome has. Anthony Allen. He has. Alright, so I am not going to keep this up long because I do want that chair Ellison could feed 50 families for a month. What? That chair Ellison can feed 50 families for a month. I don't know. Look, I don't know what to think about Ellison, man. I saw the interview. I have to be honest. I get so aggravated listening to Democrats. It becomes difficult to listen to. Yeah, it becomes difficult to listen to, man. I listened to the entire thing, though. I said, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to force myself to listen to what Ellison is saying. The chair he was sitting in could feed 50 families. I'm trying to say sitting in the what is those things called? A throne or something, like sitting on a throne. If these guys were serious, I mean, he's like, yeah, we have to pass the Employee Free Choice Act. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to do this. We need to do that. And it's like, but wait a minute. You guys had the presidency, the House, and the Senate 8 years ago. Yeah. Why didn't you do it then? Why now? Like, I'm always enamored by this thought of why now? Why are you also all of a sudden coming across this thing of, hey, maybe we need to do those things. You know, we need to actually support workers. Maybe we need to do that. Maybe we need to do that. I don't understand why it's one of those things where they have to come around to that particular choice. If you have to come around to that choice, and if you have to be pressured for that choice, then that means that is not your normal disposition. I would prefer somebody it's their normal disposition to represent my interests. So I'm going to end this. I have like another one that I want to do before it gets too late, and my signal seems to be working, so I'm going to go for it. All right, guys. Thanks. Have a good one.